We're fearlessly talking about the biggest stories that matter to you the most. Breaking news, John Calipari is finalizing a 5-year deal to become the Arkansas Razorbacks' next head coach, covering college sports like no one else. The biggest guests in sports. We now welcome in Hall of Famer Jim Calhoun.
Such a pride I had, I came to connect.
The legend, Tim Tebow, joins us.
We'll run it back. I like it.
The legend, Herschel Walker. Welcome in, everybody. Tuesday morning edition, Aaron Torres Sports Podcast. I'm your host, Aaron Torres. Hope everybody's doing well. Hope everybody's having a great day. Man, oh man, oh man. We got a lot to discuss here on a Tuesday morning. I was thinking about this morning as I prep for the show. Like, the days of having to grind through July and August and whatever, I cannot believe how much we have to discuss. So let's get right into it. We're going to open the latest at Penn State. I think there are some updates that you need to know. James Franklin was fired on Sunday after our show. We did a bonus pod. I think the field to replace him is starting to kind of make its way around and clear itself out, so we'll discuss that. The AP college basketball poll dropped on Monday. You know I got takes. Who's overrated, who's underrated, who's ranked that shouldn't be, who isn't ranked but probably should be. So we'll discuss all that. And then finally, we will wrap as we record here, and it is, of course, 11:07 Eastern time. Tyran Stokes, number one high school basketball player in America, has not committed. A lot of people thought he was going to commit last week. Kentucky fans, it's Big Blue madness in a different kind of way in Lexington. What is going on with Tyran Stokes? We will discuss all that. Before we get started, a couple quick reminders. Make sure you're subscribed to Aaron Torres Pod YouTube channel. New clips, new videos going up every single day. We're closing in on 63,000 subscribers. What do the kids say? Road to 63K, road to 70K, road to 100K. We're on the road to all of them. And I am so grateful for all of your support. So make sure you're subscribed. Also, Apple, Spotify, wherever you get your podcast, please make sure to subscribe there as well. And if you want to do your boy Torres a solid, leave a 5-star rating and review. Speaking of solids, you know who's solid? SeatGeek. SeatGeek and the SeatGeek app. Listen, SeatGeek is the official ticketing partner of the Aaron Torres Pod. And it's that time of year. Listen, you want to go to college football games. Maybe your football team stinks and you want to get ready for basketball season. Maybe you're a baseball fan, NFL, whatever. Well, guess what? When you get tickets, you got to go ahead and use SeatGeek. It is America's #1 rated ticketing app. 28 million downloads. What I love about SeatGeek is that every single ticket on the app is rated 1 through 10. Green dot, red dot. Green means you go ahead and purchase. Red dot means you need to go ahead and slow down. The best part is, like I said, SeatGeek, they take care of listeners of the Aaron Torres Pod. How about this? You know I have a code for you all. You can use code Torres for $20 off tickets at SeatGeek. That's $20 off your first purchase with promo code Torres when you buy tickets on the SeatGeek app. So again, all you got to do, go to SeatGeek.com, download the SeatGeek app. Any game, any show, doesn't just have to be college football, doesn't just have to be college basketball. Any show, any concert, comedy, whatever, you go to SeatGeek, SeatGeek.com, use promo code Torres. It gets you $20 off your first purchase. I know a lot of you have. Paul in the chat, you actually use SeatGeek on Saturday to go to that Texas A&M Florida debacle. I think it's the second to last time that we will see Billy Napier on the sidelines in a Florida Gators polo. So thank you to Paul for using SeatGeek. Again, SeatGeek.com, promo code Torres. With that said, it is a busy time of year and of the week. There is zero more time to waste. So people, you know what we got to do. We got to go ahead and get to the topic of the day. Topic of the day. Listen, topic of the universe in college sports right now, and really the broader sports spectrum as well, is Penn State football. And I'll be honest. So we did the show on Sunday. I had just sat down, put on Red Zone, ready to watch NFL, and I saw that James Franklin was fired. We did an immediate reaction after that. I appreciate all of you who tuned in. I'll be real. I'm still a little stunned that Penn State did it. Now, I'm not going to do the whole thing. I saw Josh Pate did a big rant about how it was the worst decision that was ever made. I respect Josh. I sort of agree with him, but I sort of don't. Kind of my opinion of it is, listen, I'm stunned. I can't believe that 3 weeks ago we were talking about a top 10 matchup between Oregon and Penn State, literally the last Saturday of September. It's October 14th, and he is out as a head coach. The counter to that, though, is what we've talked about all spring, all fall long, and really back into the summer. I remember talking about this in the summer when the AP poll came out, this and that, is that if James Franklin couldn't do it with this roster, he probably never would. And I think now that Drew Aller is out, with the next 3 games, you're looking at Iowa, at Ohio State, Indiana. You're probably going to lose those 3 without Drew Aller. And I don't even think Drew Aller is that good, but, I feel bad about be clear. I feel bad about the Drew Aller injury. I'm not trying to make light of it. But without Drew Aller, without your starting quarterback, I think you're probably losing those 3. Now, all of a sudden, you're 3-6 in the most anticipated season in probably 30 years. And so I think maybe I thought that there would be a tough decision to make at the end of the season. What I actually really thought was that possibly maybe they would just go ahead and hope that he could find another job and save themselves $45-46 million. But instead, he was fired on Sunday, and I'm still a little bit shocked. With that said, though, here's the thing. James Franklin's going to be fine. He's going to be a very wealthy man. I think he is a legitimate candidate, and I think he would be a good hire for a lot of jobs, the Virginia Techs, the Arkansas, the Kentucky, if it opens with Mark Stoops, okay? But at the same time, the story today is Penn State, and the story is what happens next. So we did the reaction show on Sunday. We kind of loosely talked about candidates at the end, but it is now 48 hours or so removed from the firing, and it's time to dive in 2 feet deep. We don't know exactly who would actually take the job, who wouldn't take the job, who's using it as leverage to keep the job that they have or to get a raise at the job that they have. But I do think there were a couple interesting updates over the course of the last couple days that I do think we have to talk about. I think the first one, you already know where I'm going. It doesn't matter who your favorite national college sports writer is, college sports YouTuber, maybe it's Torres, I don't know. As soon as the Penn State job opened up, though, there was only one man whose name emerged and popped to the surface of that coaching search, and it's Nebraska head coach Matt Rhule. And I thought it was interesting. Bruce Feldman right away immediately says it's a Matt Rhule, Kurt Cignetti kind of deal. You can see it right there when I'm hearing Penn State's search starts with Kurt Cignetti and Matt Rhule. Both have done great jobs, blah, blah, blah. Rhule is super close with AD Pat Kraft. The tweet's there. You can read it for yourself. Bruce Feldman says it's a Matt Rhule, Kurt Cignetti thing. Our buddy John Talty, who I basically am referencing at every show at this point, he does a great job at CBS. He said that it starts with Matt Rhule. I've seen quite literally dozens of other tweets and comments and commentators and whatever saying it starts with Matt Rhule. And so let's talk a little bit about Matt Rhule, and let's listen to Matt Rhule. Producer Matt, not Matt Rhule. We'll get to the Matt Rhule audio in a second, but I want to set up the audio with a little bit of context, okay? Listen, if you're watching this show on this day, you probably know a little bit about Matt Rhule's background, okay? But why is Matt Rhule the number one candidate? Well, it makes a lot of sense on a lot of different levels, okay? Matt Rhule, I think everybody knows, he played at Penn State under Joe Paterno in the mid-90s. So he has ties to the state of Pennsylvania. He obviously also coached at Temple in that state. I don't think the Temple thing is as important, but listen, let me, I'm all over the place early here on a Tuesday, but played at Penn State, began his coaching career as a volunteer assistant at Penn State, met his wife at Penn State. And I think what's also worth noting, and to me, this in some ways is actually more important than the fact that he played at Penn State. He's very close with Penn State's current AD, Pat Kraft. Pat Kraft was the person that he worked with at Temple. Pat Kraft was the AD at Temple when he was the head coach at Temple as well. They're still good friends. The reports are they still talk regularly. It's interesting when the AD who hired Matt Rhule is not there. That was Trev Alberts, who's now at Texas A&M. But the AD that is at Nebraska now, Troy Dannon, when he got the Nebraska AD job, he called Pat Kraft and said, what do I need to know about Matt Rhule? Pat Kraft raved about him. He basically said, whatever he asked for, just do it because he's going to win. And so I bring it up because I think everyone's focusing on the fact that he played at Penn State. He met his wife at Penn State. I think the more important part is the relationship with the AD, who he is very clearly close with. So the question now becomes, is Matt Rhule a candidate? Would he take the job? I think those are 2 different conversations. But where I do think it is fair to start is with Matt Rhule himself. So he has a Nebraska plays Minnesota this weekend. He had his normal Monday media availability. The first question was about the Penn State coaching job. He gave about a 3-minute answer. We went ahead and condensed it to what I think is probably about the most important 40 or 50 seconds. So here is Matt Rhule addressing the Nebraska opening at his Monday press conference.
Maybe it's been a while here, but this is what happens when you win. I've dealt with it. We've won at Temple, and I dealt with it all the time. I've dealt with Baylor. I'm not going to talk about those things ever. I'm not going to talk about my contract here. I'm going to talk about the team. But, I absolutely love it here. And I want us to continue to take the steps needed for us to turn this thing into a beast. And players all across the country want to come here. We have the best facilities. We have elite fans. And, I'm just looking at the future. So, but again, I love that place. I love Pat. I love James Franklin. I'm sad that came to an end. I wish him the absolute best, but I'm really happy here and excited to get going this week on Minnesota.
So first off, I want to clarify for people who are listening that maybe didn't get that. When he said I've dealt with this before at Temple, at Baylor, what he means is speculation on leaving for other coaching jobs. But let's go ahead and talk about this audio here. He says, this is what happens when you win. I've dealt with it. I'm not going to talk about job openings when they come. I'm not going to talk about my contract here. I'm going to talk about the team that I have. So I think there's a couple things that stand out. The first thing is, one, I do think if you're a Nebraska fan, he kind of hit the right tone. I don't know that it was the definitive no doubt about it, there's 0% chance he's leaving kind of vibe that I think I necessarily would have wanted if I'm a Nebraska fan. Now, there's a few things here. Because I do think that, I think that, let me put it this way. I think you could say, well, he said, I'm happy here. He said, I love it here. We want to turn it into a beast, this and that. What I would also say is there is a definitive way that you can answer these type questions, right? Dan Lanning has been like, I am not a candidate for that job. Don't ever mention my name again. And it could be about any job, the best one that I've still seen to this day, if you remember the year that USC hired Lincoln Riley, there was like a 2-day window where people were like, would Mike Tomlin leave the NFL for college? And he went to the podium and he said, I am not a candidate. That's the stupidest question I've ever heard. Do not put my name in your mouth for any job, college, pro, whatever. I'm the Pittsburgh Steelers head coach. So there is a more definitive way to do it. But what I would say with Matt Rhule is I think it's fair to wonder if he's a legitimate candidate, but fair to wonder this. It's fair to wonder if Matt Rhule even knows if he would be interested in this job, right? Because I think there's two things with Matt Rhule. One, is he a candidate? Absolutely. Two, would he take the job? And we have to remember a couple other things. Is that one, the context of the rest of the season matters. But two, if you're Matt Rhule, I do think there is a world where, somewhere down the road, you envision maybe I somehow finish my career at Penn State. But I think it's fair to say that he has no idea what he's even thinking, because besides the fact that he's in the middle of a season, who could have possibly imagined that this head coaching job was opening up? I'll give you a very random side tangent, okay? But Chris Beard was the Texas Tech head coach, and it was known for years that this is basketball, of course, so side tangent, but it'll come full circle. Chris Beard for years was, the Texas Tech basketball coach, and he was really good, and he led him to a Final Four national championship game in 2019. But it was kind of known in the industry. He was a Texas alum. He kind of viewed Texas as his dream job, as the place that he could turn into his Kentucky, his UNC, his whatever. And I remember when the job opened, and it was a weird deal because Shaka Smart entered the season on the hot seat. Then they were really good. They won the Big 12 tournament. They were a 3 seed, and it felt like the job wasn't even going to open up. And so I think Chris Beard at some point that season was like, listen, I'm happy at Texas Tech. I don't plan on going anywhere. And then Texas lost in the first round of the tournament. Shaka leaves for the Marquette job. And I remember at the time, Chris Beard took the Texas job, obviously, but I remember him saying how could I have thought it was going to open up? They were a 3 seed in the NCAA tournament coming off a Big 12 tournament championship. And so I think that's where Matt Rhule probably has to be, is I do think there was probably a moment in time where he was like, I would love to be the Penn State coach. There probably were 1,000 times in his life where he said, I'd love to be the Penn State coach. But to ask him a question on Monday, when as of even Friday afternoon, we thought there was 0% chance this job was opening up, you have to understand how fast this stuff is coming at him. And so to bring it full circle, I think there's two different conversations about, is he a candidate versus if he would take the job? Those are two different things. Is he a candidate? Would he? Absolutely. Would he take the job? That is a different conversation. And where it gets interesting to me on Matt Rhule is, I'll be honest, is I do kind of sort of think, let me put it this way. I kind of just wonder, is Penn State a definitively better job than Nebraska in the NIL era? Now, I see a couple people in the chat, Luke and Paul, arguing about recruiting bases, and Penn State has more high school talent, or Pennsylvania has more high school talent, this and that. So I get it. And I think if you had asked me 3 years ago, 5 years ago, 10 years ago, 20 years ago, if Penn State was a better job than Nebraska, I would say absolutely. I still think Penn State is probably a little bit of a better job than Nebraska. I think it's interesting. Nebraska has won national championships more recently than Penn State. But what I would also say to that is that when you look at Penn State and you look at Nebraska, I don't know that it is a fundamentally significantly better job. Listen, I think in the NIL era, I think any job in the Big Ten to a degree and any job in the SEC is a good job. If Curt Cignetti can turn Indiana into a top 5 team, maybe Curt Cignetti is just the best coach in college football. We've talked about that. But 2, if it can be done in Indiana, it can be done at most of these SEC and Big Ten schools. Vandy, by the way, top 25 team that is a favorite over LSU. Imagine saying that a couple years ago. So I think all of these jobs are kind of about the same. Do I think that fundamentally Georgia is a better job than Vandy? Yes. But do I think that, say, Ole Miss is a definitively, I think it's a better job, but I think if you get the right guy with the portal, with NIL, it's not like a huge step up. And that's how I feel about Nebraska and Penn State. And so then the question becomes, if it's not a fundamentally significantly better job, if it doesn't give you a fundamentally significantly better chance to achieve everything you want to achieve, is it worth moving everything? Now, listen, if Matt Rhule was the head coach at, say, Vandy, I think Vandy's a good example, Purdue, Rutgers, yes, there is a clear delineation between Rutgers and Penn State, between Vandy and then you have to think about the job. But to I don't know that Penn State is significantly a good enough job to blow up your life and start over from scratch, because I think it's worth noting he's kind of got it rolling at Nebraska, and he has kind of made Nebraska home. And so listen, if any Penn State fan wants to tell me, listen, it's his dream job, whatever. Yes, I know. I'm sure you can find a video clip from 2 years ago, 5 years ago, 10 years ago, maybe yesterday, where he talks about how much he has respect for Penn State and how it was probably his dream job at some point. But now you're at Nebraska. You're in year three, right? In year 3, it is year 3. You're having a ton of success. It's worth noting, Dylan Raiola, is Dylan Raiola ever going to be the guy, the number one player in college, the number one, quarterback in college football? I don't know. But he's going into year 3 next year. And I know that year 3 is kind of the Matt Rhule year. Every year his teams make big leaps. But you really are building for Dylan Raiola's junior year, where you should be legitimately a Big Ten title contender a season from now. And so to me, to blow all that up, I just don't know. And I just don't know, again, when you're at a job that I think is relatively comparable, and I think a job that you've gotten very comfortable with. I don't know how many people know this. Matt Rhule's wife owns a business in town. I'm certainly not saying that if, you get $10 million a year and you could go to your alma mater and the place that you met, that maybe she doesn't reconsider. But I'm just saying these are things that people talk about. I think we all just think in a vacuum, oh, this guy's going to leave. It's his dream job. And it's well, has he talked to his wife? What about his kids? He's got kids in school right now. I thought it was interesting. He did say this, I believe, in the press conference on Monday, but he said, he referenced the fact that James Franklin's family, I think it was maybe on Saturday against Northwestern. I don't want to put a dark light on Penn State fans, but somebody said something to his family, somebody whatever. And Matt Rhule said, hey, one of my favorite things about Nebraska, my wife and kids can sit in the stands and there are no issues. And I guess what that means to me is that, he's still beloved in the community. He's still revered in the community. He's still appreciated in the community. His wife has a career there. His kids are in school there. His parents have moved to Nebraska. I don't know how many people know that. And I understand when you're rich and you're making $10 million a year, you can hire a moving company. You can hire whatever. You can help your kids adjust to a new school. But it's I don't know. Many of you are are parents. Would you want to uproot your family and move them 1,000 miles away or 1,500 miles away or 800 miles away or whatever it is for a slightly better job when you already have a good one? So we'll see what happens. Now, it is worth noting, producer Matt, you can pop up Dylan Raiola's Instagram post from Monday morning. He said Nebraska head ball coach with him hugging Matt Rhule. So Dylan Raiola is not worried. I'll say this. I think part of it may be, how does this season end for Nebraska? Like, if you're a Penn State fan and you really want Matt Rhule, and I think, by the way, there's reasons to even question, like, is Matt Rhule that good of a candidate? I mean, I hate to say it, but he's got a pretty comparable record to James Franklin as far as top 25 teams are concerned. Now, it's a different deal. James Franklin was there much longer, but Matt Rhule still doesn't have that like super signature win at Nebraska. But I bring it up because if you want him at Penn State, there's kind of this needle that needs to be threaded, because I do think, like, look, right now, everybody's going to fight to keep him because he's 5-1. But, they're halfway through their season. Listen, they play a tough Minnesota team on the road this weekend at night, Friday night. A lot of ratings are going to be through the roof in Pennsylvania for that one. Like, you lose that one, now all of a sudden everybody in Nebraska doesn't love you so much. You lose to USC in a few weeks. I'll tell you what, you talk about an interesting game all of a sudden. Nebraska actually plays at Penn State the second to last weekend of the season, Saturday the 22nd. They play Iowa later in the year. And so I just bring it up because for Matt Rhule, I do kind of think that like it really, to me, boils down to how good are you this season? Because you're 5-1. Like, if you finish 10-2, Nebraska is going to throw the kitchen sink at you and give you whatever you want to stay. I think if you finish 5-7, which I don't think is going to happen, I don't think you're losing 6 straight, then Penn State doesn't want you. And so, like, 7-5, that's kind of 2-4 down the stretch to, are you as hot at Nebraska? I'm rambling. I tend to do that from time to time, but I bring it up because, to me, I think that's the needle that is threaded, right? Is if things start to go a little sketchy at Nebraska, do you reconsider? If they don't, I'm just trying to bring it up to just say, like, I don't think Matt Rhule knows. And by the way, I think that's part of the reason he answered the question the way that he did, because he's like, and I'm not trying to wish ill will upon anybody, but what if I say I am definitively not the Penn State head coach? Then something weird happens. Dylan Raiola sprains an ankle, whatever. You lose 2 straight. Now all of a sudden everyone in Nebraska is mad at you. Nebraska people are lovely, by the way, but I'm just saying these are the things that's why you don't answer the question, the definitive, I would never leave for Penn State. I'm the Nebraska head coach until the day I die. What is the old saying? Until they put me in a wood box. That was the famous Tommy Tuberville quote at Ole Miss. Anyway, bring it up because that is the update with Matt Rhule. I wasn't planning on doing like 18 minutes of Matt Rhule content, but darn it, it's a Tuesday in October. And if you're not going to do 18 minutes of Matt Rhule content on a Tuesday in October, when are you going to do it? By the way, that's not even Coach Tommy Tuberville. That's Senator Tommy Tuberville to you. All right, a couple other notes on the Penn State gig. One, listen, the Cignetti thing has become very interesting, okay? So the Bruce Feldman tweet initially references Cignetti is right up there with Matt Rhule as the top candidates. And it's become kind of a fascinating talking point of, like, is Indiana a better job than Penn State in this new NIL era? The answer is no. Penn State is still a better job, 102,000 people, whiteout, this, that. Cignetti is from Pennsylvania. But I do think then there's also the counter conversation of, if you have things rolling at Indiana, why do you want to start over? And so I'll say this about Cignetti. I think everyone who covers Indiana, who follows Indiana, is not worried about this at all. And I'll be real, I don't know at this point that I would be either. First of all, Cignetti's, I don't know how many people know much about his background. He's 64 years old, okay? He's at Indiana. He has said, I want to retire at Indiana. And it's not that I don't believe him, but I do think there is something to the effect of, dude, he waited until he was 50 to get his first head coaching job. I believe it was Indiana University of Purdue that was his first head coaching job. So he didn't get his first head coaching job till he was 50. He didn't get his first power conference job till he was like, 61, 62, something like that. And it's just like, at some point, like, he's happy there. They love him there. And I do think there's something too. You can build a legacy at Indiana where they're building statues for you. They may already build a statue based on what you've done. Where you go to Penn State, it's kind of like, okay, congrats on those 2 historically great seasons at Indiana. We don't care about that anymore. Come do that here and prove you're worthy. The other thing with Cignetti that I actually don't think is being talked about enough, and we talked about this a little bit on the reaction show when James Franklin was fired on Sunday afternoon. The thing with Cignetti, I don't think people are considering enough. There is a very good chance that he will be coaching into January of this year. Remember, the college football playoff now, the top 4 teams get automatic buys into the second round. Last year, it was the top 4 conference champions. So a team like Penn State, ironically, a team like Notre Dame, who doesn't play in a conference, if you didn't win your conference championship, you couldn't get that buy. Well, this year, it is just the 4 best teams at the end of the year get the first round buy into the college football playoff. Well, look at Indiana's schedule. There is a very good chance they're going to finish the regular season either 11-1 or 12-0. Play for a Big Ten championship game. And if they play for a Big Ten championship and they're 12-0, even if they were to lose to Ohio State or a rematch with Oregon or whatever, I don't really see the scenario where they're not getting a top 4 seed. If you're 11-2 in the Big Ten runner-up or 12-1 in the Big Ten runner-up, you're getting a first-round bye. Well, all of a sudden you get a first-round bye. You're not playing again until New Year's Eve, New Year's Day, January 1, January 2. And if you're Penn State, can you wait that long to hire a head coach? I know Curt Cignetti's great. You're going to wait till January to talk to Curt Cignetti, hoping that he takes the job. Now, listen, if you have some backdoor deal behind the scenes where it's promised that he's going to take the job, then that's one thing. That just feels like a long time to wait. I mean, you don't fire a coach on October 12th to wait until January 6th to hire him. And again, that's assuming that Indiana loses its first playoff game on December 1st, January 1st, whatever. Now, things change. Maybe they get the 6th seed and they're playing and they lose on December 21st or whatever. But I'm just saying that's a long time to wait for Curt Cignetti. And I think increasingly it's looking like Indiana is going to get one of those top 4 buys. And if they get one of those top 4 buys, I think it's a new deal altogether. A couple other names that have popped up. Brent Key was a name that we did not mention a few days ago. Brent Key is the Georgia Tech head coach. Now, he doesn't have the geographic ties that Matt Rhule and Curt Cignetti do. Matt Rhule played at Penn State. Curt Cignetti, if I didn't mention it, was born in Pittsburgh, was raised kind of in that area. But Brent Key is the hot name. Georgia Tech is 6-0 right now. The thing with Georgia Tech is that, actually, before we get to that, Brent Key was asked about openings in general by the Atlanta Journal-Constitution. We don't have any audio, but there was a post from the AJC. Chad Bishop, who works for the Atlanta Journal-Constitution, was asked, or I guess he tweeted out a reference from another AJC reporter, but he said Brent Key is, quote, so happy at Georgia Tech. And they did a sit-down interview. It was behind a paywall. You know our stance on paywalls. We don't share intel that's shared behind a paywall out of respect to those reporters. But Brent Key basically saying the Matt Rhule, I'm not interested. I'm happy here, whatever. Thing with Brent Key is a couple things. One, to me, if he were going to leave for Georgia Tech, and I think the important, reference with Brent Key, I think it's important to note, like, Georgia Tech has actually done a good job, given some of their limitations, to, actually take pretty good care of him, all things considered. They've upgraded facilities. They've upgraded the NIL budget. They've done a good job of really taking care of everything that he needs as far as being competitive at the highest level. And you can see it because Georgia Tech is 6-0. So one, he's got really good support. If you believe that the ACC is stable, the ACC is actually very winnable. Like, that's kind of like the Rhett Lashlee Arkansas conundrum right now, is like Rhett Lashlee's like, well, you want to be in the SEC, but the ACC is functional for at least a few more years. And if it's functional for a few more years, I can win a bunch of games here. So does he feel that way about Georgia Tech? I think beyond that, the other thing is he, like Curt Cignetti, could be coaching into mid to late December. Georgia Tech 6-0. They've already beaten Clemson. They don't play Louisville. They don't play Miami. They actually don't play Virginia, who is all of a sudden a threat. They do have a matchup with Duke this weekend, which is 3-0 in ACC play. But I just bring it up to very simply say that they're another team that very much could be playing in the college football playoff. And so I think that's noteworthy as well. If they're the 11 seed, the second ACC team, Are they, they play December 21st, say they go to whatever, they go to Oregon and somehow get a win. Now you're talking about another team that's playing into early December or early January. So just something to think about. The last name, because I'm happy to do 22 minutes of Matt Rhule content, but I was not planning on it. The other name that seems to be coming up that I don't know that I'm all that excited about, team I just mentioned, Manny Diaz and the Duke Blue Devils. Duke sitting at 4-2 right now. What's interesting about Duke, who they lost to earlier in the year was, a little school by the name of Tulane with John Summerall, whose name is obviously popping up for all of these coaching searches. But Manny Diaz, for people who don't fully understand, 4-2 a few years ago. 2, I give him credit. He's clearly created interest in that Duke program. Darian Mensah, the quarterback, is one of the highest paid quarterbacks in college football. Duke coming off a 9-win season a year ago. And the reason, by the way, that people would associate Manny Diaz with Penn State, he was the DC there for 2 years. Remember, he got fired at Miami, goes to Penn State. They have back-to-back great seasons with him as the defensive coordinator. He then decides to leave for the Duke head coaching job. As I said, 9-4 last year, 4-2 this year going into this weekend's game against Georgia Tech. Not great at math, but that comes out to little 13-6 overall, little 66% or so win percentage. I think the thing with Manny Diaz is we did see him at a power conference level. He's good. I just don't know that he is great. I just don't know that he is like the guy. Like, let me put it this way. I don't mean to be disrespectful. Manny Diaz, if you're watching, I apologize. You can reach out to me privately on this. Same with, the Diaz family. Let me put it this way, though. I don't know that you fire James Franklin and pay him $48 million to go away to hire Manny Diaz. Just say it. I mean, you could. Manny Diaz, though, like I said, I just had his record up. 3 years as the head coach at Miami, 21-15 overall. And Mario Cristobal has taken that thing to the moon since Manny Diaz left. So maybe he learned a ton. Maybe I'm dead wrong on Manny Diaz. I think it's a little crazy to fire James Franklin and pay him $48 million to go away. But that is that. Really quickly, I guess I should say one last thought on this. Is I just want to, I have more thoughts on the Penn State side. I mentioned Manny Diaz. The thing that I do keep coming back to, I will be curious if Matt Rhule and Curt Cignetti say no, because I do think there's this belief. I understand the idea that, listen, man, James Franklin had hit a glass ceiling. He was never going to get over the hump. I get that. But I will wrap by saying, like, I'll be curious who they end up with. I think everybody is associating this Penn State. He's Penn State. James Franklin was Penn State's Mark Richt. Well, when they fired Mark Richt, they only fired Mark Richt because Kirby Smart was about to take the South Carolina head coaching job. He was a Georgia alum, and Georgia fans just felt like we can't let this guy go. I don't know that there is that candidate if Matt Rhule says no, and certainly if Curt Cignetti says no. So I just bring it up because paying someone $48 million without a plan is crazy. Crazier things have happened in college football, but maybe the AD Pat Kraft has something up his sleeve that I'm not anticipating. All right, this is what we're going to do. We're going to take a quick break. Matt, you can search the comment section for some good comments. The chat is lively here on a Tuesday morning. We appreciate your support. I already see one person shouting out. Circa, so we appreciate the support. By the way, since we are talking Penn State coaching candidates, I do see Luke bring up the white whale that is Urban Meyer. Luke says Urban Meyer is a pipe dream. Everyone knows he's not a real candidate. I'll tell you this. I'll tell you a crazy story. I remember, like, one of the first years I was doing this professionally was the year that Jim Tressel got fired at Ohio State, and Luke Fickell, ironically, was the interim at the time. And I just bring it up because Urban Meyer was out of coaching. And I remember people saying at the time, I remember hearing from somebody credible at the time, this was 15 years ago now, but basically somebody said something to the effect of, there are only 2 jobs that Urban Meyer would come back for. At the time, the SEC was so dominant, you're not going to the SEC. Said the only 2 jobs he's going to come back for are Ohio State, Penn State. Ohio State clearly opened, so maybe he'd come back for Penn State. But I think Luke is right. I think it's a pipe dream. I'll be honest. I remember saying when Urban Meyer retired, like during the 2019-ish, 2020 timeframe, I said at some point he's going to get back into coaching. But I'll tell you, man, between the Jacksonville Jaguars, just watch him on Big Noon, he just feels old. Like I'm not trying to be a jerk. He's kind of old and beat down. I mean, Urban Meyer is like 15 years younger than Nick Saban, who looks more spry and lively on TV. And I don't know that Urban Meyer, like health-wise, I don't know. I don't think that he could take over a major program. All right, so what we're going to do, we're going to take a quick break, come back. Matt has a couple questions starred and ready to go. We'll talk about those. Then we'll talk a little college hoops. AP Top 25 is out, and Torres has takes on that. Quick break. Be right back. All right, we're going to get back to the show in a minute, but before we do, I have so many people that reach out and say, Torres, you give me hours and hours and hours of free content every day, every month, every year. What can I do to help support the show? Well, you want to support the show and look good in the process. Make sure to check out and support the Aaron Torres Media merch store at aarontorresonline.com/merchandise. Some of you wondering, what can I get in that merch store, Torres? Well, Kentucky fans, we got our Mark Pope Hope and Pope t-shirts. That is right. Mark Pope, monster first year. Year 2 is going to be even better. Get your Hope and Pope t-shirt at aarontorresonline.com/merchandise. Arkansas fans, the Big Pig Invasion is coming. It is here. John Calipari has things rocking. Get your Big Pig Invasion tees. Again, aarontorresonline.com/merchandise. St. John's fans, we have our Big Rick Energy t-shirts. And if you're just a college basketball fan in general, guess what? Your March is for Day Drinking shirt. That is the shirt that you need year-round, but especially for the next NCAA tournament. You can order yours now. By the way, football fans, we got you covered too. Auburn fans, we already know the freeze warning has hit the plains. Make sure to get your freeze warning t-shirts. Also, Nebraska fans, new era, new rules, the t-shirt that you need before the start of this coming season. And oh, by the way, if you're a Colorado fan, if you're just a Coach Prime fan, we have our Dion shirts and hats, more of them than we know what to do with. So to check out the full line of Aaron Torres Media merch and also support the show, good news is we're going to have even more for the fall. Check out the Aaron Torres Media merch store at aarontorresonline.com/merchandise. And for more information, you can always reach out at Aaron Torres Podcast Questions at gmail.com. All right, everybody. I'm back. Good to be back. So want to get to some college hoops in a minute. Before we do, though, do we have any questions or comments from the chat? Matt would love to hear from them. Curb Blurb says, love your podcast. You get college ball. Roll Tide. First of all, thank you, Curb. By the way, Curb, I don't know if you're familiar with Ryan Fowler. Tide 100.9. I go on his show every single Wednesday, sometimes Thursday. So make sure to check me out there. I appreciate it. I think we do as good. Listen, I really, and I'm not trying to sound arrogant here. After we got off air on, Sunday morning, it was before James Franklin got fired, but we did 25 minutes on Georgia Auburn, which I still think is an atrocity. We talked Kurt Cignetti. We talked about a lot of different things. I really thought, I said, I don't think there's any show anywhere that's quite like this one. There's people that are good on college basketball. There's people that are good on college football. I don't think there's anyone that covers both as well. And I think we do it in a fun way. We talk about the topics that you guys want to talk about. Listen, I'm not criticizing anybody else, but it feels like some of these channels, it's like, it's just game previews and whatever. It's like, we're diving into Matt Rhule. We're having honest conversations about this. Billy Napier. By the way, I think Saturday might be Billy Napier's last stand, but that's another conversation. But we appreciate your support, Curb Blurbs. Click, subscribe, rate, do all that stuff. We appreciate it. Matt, you can throw the podcast link in the comment section as well. Have a couple people subscribe there as well. But yeah, we appreciate your support. Any support. By the way, we do have the membership tier, $4.99 a month. If you want to support the show, all you got to do is click that join tab at the top of the screen. And that helps us with a lot of different things behind the scenes, travel, this, that is if you want to help. All right, Matt, what is the next question? Thank you again to Curb Blurbs. Roll Tide. All right. Grinders says this would be a mistake by Rhule. Finish the Husker build. Wait for the next PSU coach to do his thing. Go back later. Listen, Grinders, I actually agree with you. Is that, again, I don't doubt that at some point Matt Rhule would have crawled over glass to take the Penn State job. And I'm not saying it's not a great job, But what I am saying is you get to a point in your life and your career. Nebraska is a really good job. I know he has publicly been like, we need to keep up with the NIL and all that stuff. But it's like, what is Nebraska? What is Penn State really giving you that Nebraska doesn't? I know that the high school recruiting's a little bit better in Penn State. Or in Pennsylvania. I get that. But it's like, I don't know, man. I mean, again, I don't mean to be disrespectful to anybody, but if this was Northwestern, if Matt Rhule was the Northwestern head coach, then yeah, I get it. But Nebraska's a pretty, I think really in this NIL era, what are there, about 25 or so jobs that you can really build something special? I think it's most of the SEC. In the Big Ten, it's obviously Ohio State, Michigan, USC, Penn State. But I would put Nebraska in there. And I think the other thing, too, is like it'd be one thing if like Dylan Raiola wasn't there or whatever, or Dylan Raiola was clearly going to the NFL after this year. But you recruited him. You've basically built your whole team to be good this year, hopefully great next year when he is a junior and draft eligible, and it might be your last year with him. And so this idea that you're going to give it all up, and by the way, with Raiola, like I don't think Raiola is going to Penn State. He's a Nebraska legacy. I think Nebraska, their number one priority, frankly, would probably be to hire somebody to make sure to retain him. So I just bring it up because I'm with Grinders. I get it. Like I get it. I don't know that I really think it's going to happen. And by the way, it's kind of like the Penn State firing of James Franklin. I get why they did it. I don't know. What other kind of questions and comments do we have, producer Matt, today? Let's see here. If you can't get Rhule or Cignetti, this is the question, Luke. This is the question, and this is what I go back to. I think it is easy to just say, oh, this is, Penn State, they hit a ceiling, and this is their version of Mark Richt. And, oh my goodness. By the way, producer Matt, my reel on the Auburn Tigers. So I did a big rant on Auburn the other day, getting screwed by the SEC. I put out the reel. It's at 125 retweets. Tim Brando just quote tweeted it and said, the silence is deafening from the SEC. So producer Matt, you have a brother in arms in Auburn. I mean, you guys are like the new Jackson Arnold and Cam Coleman over there. It's like unbelievable. But anyway, sidetrack. Just saw my notification say something Tim Brando, and I was like, oh my goodness, what does Tim Brando want from Torres on a Tuesday in October? But this is the thing. Like I said, I think there's this perception of, this is Penn State's version of Mark Richt, and Mark Richt couldn't get them over the hump. Georgia did not fire Mark Richt until Kirby Smart was going to take a job at a rival. Kirby Smart, for people who don't remember, Georgia alum, was Nick Saban's right-hand man for 7, 8, 10 years, whatever it was, at Alabama. And he was going to take the South Carolina job, and it wasn't until South Carolina was on the doorstep of hiring Kirby Smart, Georgia's dream candidate, that they basically had to make the move. And so to Luke's point, maybe they think they can get Cignetti. Maybe Cignetti has told them privately. Maybe Matt Rhule has told them privately. But every game on the schedule left for Matt Rhule is winnable. If they go 10-2 with Dylan Raiola and most of that team coming back, he's going to blow it all up because he met his wife at the ice cream store. Like, give me a break. It seems crazy to me. And so I had this thought, is that I get why you felt like you had to move on from James Franklin. I do. It was frustrating. I do think there is a very real possibility that you look up in 5 years, though, and you're like, it wasn't as bad as we thought. And the thing I'll say, too, about a 12-team playoff era is like, yes, this was the year. Yes, this was the year. I get that. But the counter to that is that like, in the 12-team playoff era, it's not like Penn State is never going to be a factor again. It's not like they were building towards this year, which they were, and now Drew Aller is leaving and you'll never be good again. And so I just, listen, Pat Kraft, the AD at Penn State, is truly like a very close friend of Matt Rhule. Maybe they've spoken privately. Maybe there's a handshake agreement. It just feels like if you don't, and that's, by the way, this is all under the assumption that you believe that Matt Rhule is the guy that can take you to the next level, which I like Matt Rhule. I don't know that he's proven that. I mean, the stats are on social media. You can find them. Not very good record against top 10 teams, top 25 teams, top whatever. There you go. Thank you, Samiris. You're doing all my homework for me. Aaron, do you think Matt Rhule's 2-22 against ranked teams? Yes. And I'll be honest, let's do kind of a full circle coaching thing, because we talked last week about, like, this was before James Franklin was hired. And it's like, Florida, they're going to get rid of Billy Napier. And so, like, people were like, would Florida try to poach James Franklin? And I'm like, well, Florida fired Billy Napier, good recruiter, good in the building. Everybody loves him. Terrible on game day. Doesn't win big games. That is the profile of Billy Napier. So it's like, James Franklin kind of fits that profile. Well, why did you fire James Franklin? He doesn't win big games. Well, according to Johnny Utah, Samiris is incorrect, and it's actually 2-23 against ranked teams, and he's never beaten a top 10 team. And so, listen, you do what you want. It's not my money. It's not my $50 million to pay out James Franklin. And I get, like, let me put it this way. I get why it was done. I get that it's probably actually going to get worse this year now that Drew Aller's out for the season. I get it. I also did feel like it was a little bit of like a message boardy overreaction. And maybe Pat Kraft has like this crazy, thing up his sleeve. I don't know. But to me, it just feels like, man, oh man, oh man, this is crazy. Matt, put up another tweet. Give me 1 sec here. Do we have anything else or no? Okay, good. Go to Penn State. It's a 3 to 5 year rebuild. It depends on how much you can retain. I have one quick thing here. Hold on 1 second. Hold on 1 quick second. Got to text the old wife. She's harassing me about something. She doesn't like my Matt Rhule takes. No, I'm just kidding. Okay. So Paul, this is actually, to me, I was thinking about this morning. These are the things that I think about is, okay. So he says, if you go to Penn State, it's back to a 3 to 5 year rebuild. It isn't necessarily because Penn State has so much talent, but I was thinking about this. Those players love James Franklin. And so let's just say hypothetically, James Franklin got the Virginia Tech job. A lot of them are from Virginia. A lot of them are from Pennsylvania. Virginia Tech. How many guys do you think would enter the portal and follow James Franklin to Virginia Tech? What if I saw this after the fact? I didn't even think about it. James Franklin was at one time the coach in waiting at Maryland. Okay. What if Mike Locksley things go sideways and they fire him? He could go to Maryland, stay in the Big Ten, play Penn State. It's like, so that's why it's hard to say that is it going to be a rebuild? Is it not going to be a rebuild? I don't think we know. Because where I stand on a rebuild conversation is basically the idea that how many of your guys do you retain? And then like in a Curt Cignetti case, how many guys do you bring? I think that's part of what made Curt Cignetti have instant success. He brought a bunch of guys from JMU that could play in the Big Ten level, and they had immediate success. And so if hypothetically Matt Rhule was able to retain most of the roster, maybe bring Dylan Raiola, which I don't think is going to happen, then all of a sudden you are talking about a very good team with very good upside. I just don't know that I truly believe it can happen. Matt, do we have any more comments on the James Franklin stuff or Penn State before we get to maybe a little bit of basketball? James Franklin could damn well end up being Penn State's version of Bo Pelini or Florida's Dan Mullen. Listen, I think these are all very fair points. Basically the coach that you fired because you thought you could do better, and it ends up getting way worse. I think the Dan Mullen thing is coming full circle. I don't know that Dan Mullen's a candidate at Penn State. Feels like Dan Mullen's agent's working overtime to make him a candidate pretty much everywhere. But I bring it up because James Franklin, according to Luke, could be Penn State's version of Bo Pelini, Dan Mullen, or Auburn's Gus Malzahn. The guy that's really good that you don't appreciate in the moment. I mean, you think Florida kind of regrets firing Dan Mullen, paying Dan Mullen out, Auburn, the Gus Malzahn stuff, whatever. So, crazy world we live in, crazy world. All right, I'll tell you what, Matt, we'll make this easy. We'll take another commercial break. That way we can pivot full speed ahead to college basketball. First AP poll came out on Monday. I got some reactions to that, and then we'll wrap with Tyran Stokes, #1 recruit in America. You can keep dropping your football comments. We're going to do a little bit of basketball. Quick break. Be right back. All right, we're going to get back to the show in a minute, but before we do, you know what we got to do. We got to thank our friends. We got to thank our partners. We got to go ahead and thank Cauley Puffs and CauleyPuffs.com. Yeah, you see the logo on the back of the screen right here. Okay, so I've told you all about Cauley Puffs, but family-owned company, not far from where I live. Joey, a huge sports fan. And one day he was sitting on the couch and he said, you know what? I need a snack that is both healthy but delicious, something my kids are going to love, something my family's going to love, something I'm going to love. And so he came up with Cauley Puffs. This is the new age health food snack. You don't need to go to the grocery aisle and buy all that crap, the Doritos, the Fritos. No, my friends, you need Cauley Puffs. Baked, not fried, avocado oil, no grease, healthy ingredients. But here's the best part. They taste freaking delicious. Actually, there's another best part. In addition to tasting delicious, in addition to being healthy, they are also taking care of listeners of the Aaron Torres pod. Okay, so check this out. All you got to do is go to CauleyPuffs.com. That's CauleyPuffs.com, CauleyPuffs.com, and you can get 15% off any purchase with the promo code Torres. That's Torres, Torres. It's that simple. 15% off any purchase, 1 bag to try them out, 100 bags to cater a party. Doesn't really matter. Promo code Torres. CauleyPuffs.com gets you 15% off. Cauley Puffs also available on Amazon. You obviously can't get the promo code there, but CauleyPuffs.com, CauleyPuffs.com, promo code Torres gets you 15% off any purchase. Thank you to our friends at Cauley Puffs. All right, everybody. I'm back. Good to be back. I know I said we were out of the comment section, but look at this guy. Go Dogs. Charles Pearson, you look scared to death doing a live podcast. Take a breather, bud. I mean, I do like friggin' hours of content every week. I don't know if I look scared to death. What you should be scared to death of is that Auburn, whatever. I was going to make a joke about the SEC office, but you were on the right side of that. Go Dogs. Congrats on the win. Must be nice to have the SEC office in your back pocket. Oh, my goodness. I can't believe I just said that. I'll tell you what. Let's go ahead and switch gears because, listen, we love college football on this show. We love college basketball on this show as well. And listen, it's crazy. We are 3 weeks away from the start of college. So 3 weeks from this past Monday, we have opening day of college basketball. Florida, Arizona, BYU, Villanova in Vegas. I will be there for that game, by the way, for that doubleheader, actually. But college basketball is here. And not only is college basketball here, but Monday was kind of an important stepping stone point in the college basketball kind of preseason because the first AP poll in college basketball ended up coming out on Monday. Now, I want to go ahead and dive in. Want to talk about some of these teams. By the way, if we got any basketball fans in here, drop your comments, drop your thoughts, drop your questions. Do want to talk about the AP top 10, top 25, whatever. But let's start. Let me just give you, first of all, the AP top 10. Then I'm going to give you some of my overrated, underrateds. You can see it there. Purdue, number 1. First time in school history, Purdue is number 1. Houston, number 2. Florida, number 3. UConn, number 4. UConn, by the way, playing their first exhibition game of the season the other day on Monday night, taking care of business against UConn, taking care of business against Boston College. St. John's, number 5 preseason, highest ranking in school history. Duke 6, Michigan 7, BYU 8, Kentucky 9, Texas Tech 10. I know I said I'd just do the top 10, but let me just quickly go through the top the final 15. Louisville at 11. We have UCLA at 12, Arizona 13, Arkansas 14, Bama 15, Iowa State 16, Illinois 17, Tennessee 18, Kansas 19, kind of low for them. Auburn, first-year head coach Stephen Pearl 20, Gonzaga 21, Michigan State 22, Creighton 23, Wisconsin 24, North Carolina 25. So that is your top 25. I'm not going to repeat them again. I will spare you that. But what I will say is I want to go ahead and go through the teams that I believe are a little bit overrated or a little bit underrated here in this first top 25. Okay, so let's go ahead and dive in. Let's talk about it. By the way, the most recent top 25 that I did was after the NBA draft deadline. I'm looking at AaronTorresOnline.com right now, which was just recently updated. It looks really, really, really good. But I bring it up because the most recent poll I did have Purdue and Houston number 1 and 2. I think those are the right 2 teams to have at number 1 and number 2. For people who don't follow college basketball on a day-to-day basis, Purdue, 2 All-Americans essentially returning, Braden Smith and Trey Kaufman-Renn. Beyond that, I think it's also important to note the Meyer kid, the Israeli guard. People love him. He dominated some of the U19 stuff for Israel. I think he could be like a one and done type player. This is Matt Painter's best team, I believe, since he's got there. I know they played for a national championship 2 years ago. Zach Edey was dominant. Some might say a little too dominant, if you know what I mean. But I think this is a more complete team. I think they are a justifiable number one. Doesn't mean that they shouldn't be there. Houston at number 2, Milos Uzan back, Emmanuel Sharp back. Oh, by the way, those 3 really good freshmen, Isaiah Harwell, Chris Sinak Jr., and Kingston Flemings. I think those are the top 2 in some particular order. What I think is interesting, I've had a lot of people say that, and I saw a couple people say this, well, the top 3 is definitive. It's Houston, Purdue, and Florida. And I've seen credit, like I saw Ryan Hammer, who's kind of a college basketball like podcast guy, whatever, say that. I want to say Jeff Goodman maybe said it at some point. I'll be honest, I like Florida. I don't love Florida. And so at number 3, I'm going to say this. I think Florida is a little bit overrated. Now, I will say, I put out a tweet on Monday that certainly made the rounds, had a lot of Gators fans calling me officially a non-ball knower. But listen, I like Florida. In my final preseason poll, I had them at number 11. Okay, so it's not as though I think Florida is not good. Like, I think we need to differentiate that. I think Florida is good. I just think that I have a few questions specifically about Florida. One, first of all, I think we're just underestimating that not only did they lose their entire backcourt, 3 guards, Walter Clayton Jr., Elijah Martin, Will Richard. All 3 were drafted. It's not like you just lost dudes. Like, you lost NBA players, including Walter Clayton, who was clearly by the end of the year the best player in college basketball outside of Cooper Flagg. So you lose 3 really good players. And I guess where my question comes in is in the backcourt with the guards. Now, Boogie Flan, I have to be careful how I say this because Arkansas fans get mad every time I talk about Boogie Flan. I like Boogie Flan. I think he got a little too much blame at Arkansas last year when the team got hot without him. I think there were a lot of variables. I think Boogie was maybe one of them, not because he's a bad player or a bad person, but because the pieces fit better when he wasn't on the court. So I defended Boogie Flan. I believe the thing I said in the summer that a couple Arkansas fans like stuck to and got mad about was that I said Boogie Flan got a raw deal at Arkansas. I don't think he got a raw deal at Arkansas. I think he did get a little too much blame. But to bring it full circle with Florida, I do think we have to acknowledge that he did not play winning basketball last year at Arkansas. Now, maybe it's on John Calipari, maybe it's on the teammates, maybe it's not on him, but that is still something to prove. The other thing with Boogie, I hate to say it, little bit injury prone as well. Not criticizing, just being honest, had the hand injury, had some offseason stuff, whatever. And then Xavier Lee is the other big guard that they got out of the portal. I like Xavier Lee. I do think it's a little bit of a step up for him to go from the Ivy League at Princeton to the SEC. And I'll tell you, I've heard interviews with the Florida coaching staff. They don't seem to think it's an issue. And maybe I'm wrong. They play Arizona night 1, and maybe he drops 27 on Tommy Lloyd and the crew, and I look like an idiot. I'm just saying I have a couple questions about them. I think it's fair to ask some questions about the backcourt. And then with the front court, it's obviously really good. I think it'll be interesting playing Tommy Hawk at the 3 when he was traditionally a 4 last year. I like Florida. I have them as a top 15 team. I don't love Florida, and it does feel to me as it just a little bit high at number 3 because I have seen some people in the college basketball media space saying there's no doubt about it. They're the top 3. It's definitive. I don't think it's definitive. I like Florida. I don't love them. Let's get to my first underrated team in the AP Top 25. It's Kentucky at number 9. And so I mentioned a minute ago that I kind of agree with the AP, Purdue, Houston at 1-2. In my final poll, I had Kentucky at number 9. And listen, I'll say this. I was ahead of Kentucky at this time last year. There were people in the media. Are they even a top 25 team? Yeah, they're a freaking top 25 team. Are you out of your freaking mind? Well, this year, I don't think people fully realize just how good, just how talented, just how deep, just how many playmakers that Kentucky basketball has this year. First of all, worth noting, SEC preseason stuff came out on Monday as well. Otega Owe preseason SEC player of the year, but it's everything else around him. It is Jalen Lowe, who has literally any person who has seen Kentucky, covered Kentucky, been in the building with Kentucky, raves about Jalen Lowe, point guard from Pitt. Mo Diabate, I think, is going to be a star. Jaden Quaintance, when he comes back, he said on this podcast, hey, I expect to be healthy for basically essentially the start of the season. Will he play night one? Probably not. Will he be back probably by SEC play? I think so. Jaden Quaintance is really good. Mo Diabate. But the thing with Kentucky, let's go back to the conversation we had last week. Remember, Kentucky had their pro day last week. And at that pro day, by the way, now it's in my head. This guy's like, oh, you look too nervous when you're on air. Anyway, Charles, you got in my head a little bit. Anyway, let's get focused here. So you go back to the Kentucky pro day, and I think about that pro day, and I think about the comment that NBA scout made. Remember what he said? He said Kentucky basketball this year is Noah's Ark. They have two of everything. And that's where I think people are sleeping on Kentucky. I'm not saying that like being 9th ranked is the most egregious misranking in the history of the world, but I think they're a top 5 team, and I think they're the SEC favorite going into this year. It's not just about the core guys. It's about the depth. It's about Trent Noah maybe being one of the best 2 or 3 shooters in the SEC. It's about Colin Chandler, who, remember, this time last year was coming off a Mormon mission, who I think has NBA upside when it all comes together. It's about the depth. It's about the size. It's about Brandon Garrison and Jaden Quaintance, that 1-2 punch at the center. You can play both of them together if need be. Reese Potter, the 7'1" center transfer from Miami of Ohio. So much depth, so many pieces. I think it's preposterous. I think Kentucky, like I said, I had them number 3 in my final 8, way too early top 25. But, I think they're just a top 5 team. I really do. And I think Mark Pope has done a great job of putting that roster together. Kentucky's first big game of the year will be against Louisville at the Yum Center. Should mention this, by the way, Kentucky and Louisville fans, 2 things. 1, tickets are on sale. SeatGeek, if you use SeatGeek.com, promo code Torres, $20 off your first purchase. SeatGeek.com, promo code Torres, $20 off your first purchase. I should also mention, Matt, we might as well do it right now. Listen, to all the Kentucky and Louisville fans that are in and around the area, that are maybe in the Nashville area, guess what? On Saturdays, college basketball, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Fridays, you need a place to watch sports. And you need to go check out the new Circa Sportsbook at Mint Kentucky Downs, Franklin, Kentucky. Okay, so I love Circa Sportsbook. I love Circa Casino. They are our official hotel and casino partner of the Aaron Torres pod. The facility in Vegas is unbelievable. Best place to watch games in Vegas. But here is the counter to that. The counter is that, oh, by the way, they have opened up a brand new sports book in Franklin, Kentucky at Mint Kentucky Downs. So if you need a place to watch college football on Saturday, if you need a place to watch all those big college basketball games on opening night, Mint Kentucky Downs, Franklin, Kentucky. It's about a 35, 40-minute drive from Nashville, not that far from Louisville, not that far from Lexington. By the way, at some point, we're going to come down, producer Matt and I'm going to do some shows from the facility, Franklin, Kentucky, Mint Kentucky Downs, the Circa Sportsbook. We will keep you updated on that. But thank you to Circa, our hotel and casino partner. And they, again, Mint Kentucky Downs, Franklin, Kentucky. So I mentioned Kentucky's a little bit underrated, in my opinion. I think Louisville at number 11 is underrated as well. Another team, listen, they not only crushed the portal, I give them so much credit. They got their work done early. It was like they were, they lost early in the tournament. Portal opens that Monday, and then it's like boom, boom, boom. They just get a bunch of guys, rosters put together. They're awesome. Top 5 team, bing, bang, boom, done, 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 whatever. Well, listen, other teams have added people. Are they a definitive top 5 team? I don't know. I do believe, in my opinion, though, they are the best team in the ACC, and it's for a few reasons. 1, Mikal Brown Jr. is a dude. Okay, we talked about him a lot over the course of the summer. This was the guy that was, kind of a top 10-ish, top 15-ish guard in the high school class. He goes to that U19 tournament with AJ DeBonsa, with Tyran Stokes, who we'll talk about in a minute, with Koa Pete. I thought he was the best player. And it's no disrespect to AJ DeBonsa, Tyran Stokes, whoever. He was unbelievable, though. And so he is in at point guard. He is a top 5 pick in his own right. By the way, Louisville actually plays Kansas in a preseason exhibition game. Peterson, Mikal Brown Jr., that is going to be must-watch TV. But it's not only Mikal Brown Jr. It's the guys they added in the portal. Isaac McNeely, Ryan Conwell, Adrian Woolley, the 3-point shooting that will be around Mikal Brown Jr. And then I'll say this. I think there's a lot of people that aren't really familiar with Louisville's front court guys. First of all, don't forget Ali Khalifa, played for Mark Pope at Kentucky and transferred to Louisville. He was hurt last year. I know that staff loves him. Now, he's not like a 31-minute-a-game guy at center, but he is a guy that is going to make plays, be an X factor, whatever. And then the German kid, Sananda Fru. I'm not, to quote Shaq, I'm not as familiar with his game, but I'm here to tell you, like that Louisville staff, like they love the guys that they have on that team. I think that the Louisville staff, again, I maybe have talked to one of them or two of them over the course of the last month or so. I think they think that people are sleeping on them. Louisville at number 11, totally underrated. Number 13 is the Arizona Wildcats. I don't know that I'd call Arizona underrated. I had Arizona at number 12 in my final poll. What I do think with Arizona, and Matt, I will want a 2-minute clip for this for our social media pages, but with Arizona, by the way, we do have our Torres on Arizona account. With Arizona, what I'll say is this. I don't think they're necessarily underrated. They're certainly not overrated. I do think they're misunderstood, though. Okay, so I've heard, you listen to other people, and I don't criticize other people's opinions. Everybody works hard, whatever. But there's this like notion going around in the kind of college basketball media space that Arizona, multiple people, they're too young to compete in the Big 12. I don't get where that comes from. Now, they have 2 freshmen that are going to play significant minutes, Braden Burries and Koa Pete, okay? First of all, Koa Pete is like a 22-year-old grown man. He's got brothers that play in the NFL, brothers that play major college football. That dude has seen more physicality than probably anybody in the Big 12 in his life. Just the backyard basketball games for, when he was a kid toughened him up for the Big 12. But to say that they're too young to compete in the Big 12 because they're going to rely on 2 freshmen, that's like saying that BYU's too young to compete in the Big 12 because of AJ DeBonsa and Xavier Staten. Nobody's saying that because it's not true. BYU has Richie Saunders and Robert Wright and whoever, Keba Keita, and Arizona has Jaden Bradley, who is a 4th-year senior point guard, former McDonald's All-American. Krivas, their starting center, is a 3rd-year college basketball player. Anthony Del Orso is a 4th-year college player. Toby Awaka is a 4th-year college player. So this notion that they're too young is preposterous. I think they're going to be really good. Night 1 against Florida, we're going to find out because Florida obviously will be breaking in a bunch of new guards and this and that. But I think Arizona, to me, is maybe the most misunderstood team in the top 25 right now. Arizona at number 13. A couple other teams that I think are overrated, underrated, misranked, whatever. Arkansas Razorbacks at number 14. So listen, there is a media smear campaign going on with Arkansas right now. So Arkansas, like, credit John Rosti because he picked up on this right away. Arkansas, the preseason SEC poll, was picked to finish 5th in the SEC. Now, 5th in the SEC maybe isn't the worst ranking, but first of all, I had Arkansas at number 8 in my final preseason poll. I have them number 2 in the SEC behind Kentucky. But it's like number 14 in America. Here's what Arkansas has. First of all, let's never forget, red hot by the end of the year, beat Florida, or not beat Florida. They beat Kentucky. They beat Texas, twice. They beat, I can't even remember all the teams they beat. They beat Mississippi State. They beat a bunch of tournament teams by the end of the year. When you get hot in the SEC in the 2025 basketball season, you beat a lot of good teams, okay? But 2, this is the part I think people forget. Arkansas returns the most talent of any, not most talent, but the most production of anybody in the SEC. DJ Wagner back, 3rd-year college point guard. Trevin Brazil, I think, is going to take a big leap. He got confident by the end of the year. Carter Knox, I saw, was 3rd-team preseason All-SEC. If there are 10 to 15 players in the SEC better than Carter Knox, then the SEC is the greatest conference in the history of college basketball. He's going to be awesome. Billy Richmond is back. Then you had the freshmen, Darius Acuff, Malik Thomas, the 2 big guys, Nick Pringle and Malik Ewan, a couple other pieces here and there, but it's like that team has everything. Now, they're not necessarily the best shooting team, but 1, is Florida the best shooting team? Boogie Fland? Is Kentucky the best shooting team? No. And 2, I think they have enough shooting, but they have so much size, so much physicality. Again, I had them at number 8, and I think you could justify them at 6, 7, whatever. I think Arkansas is I think they're the most underrated team in this poll at number 14. Finally, the only other team, you can't call them underrated or underranked or whatever because they're not ranked. Will Wade's NC State Wolfpack. Okay, so NC State actually was the number 26 team in the top 25. My final poll of the summer, I had them at number 21 overall. So they're one spot away. Couple votes here, couple votes there, whatever. But I do think that, in my opinion, this is a top 20 team in college basketball. Darion Williams is a dog. Van Allen Lubin, I think, is going to break out in that system. Trey Holloman, the point guard, I don't think people realize how good he was for Michigan State, even though the stats don't totally reflect it. Matt Abel, by the way, freshman. I believe he was the highest rated commit since Dennis Smith Jr. at NC State, who has then been, by the way, he's since been surpassed by Cole Kloer, who just committed a few weeks ago. So this is a deep team. This is a talented team. And I'll say this, they're certainly not running from the smoke. We saw Darion Williams at ACC Media Day last week basically saying, we want Carolina. This is our rivalry now. I don't like those guys. That coach screwed over my teammate, Van Allen Lubin, and my old teammate, Kerwin Walton at Texas Tech. And so NC State is coming for that smoke. And I'll just be fascinated. I think they're a top 25 team. I think what'll be interesting about them, they go to Maui early. Now, Maui isn't necessarily what it once was because of the Players Era tournament, but we'll get a good stage early to gauge NC State. You look at that Maui field this year, it's pretty weak because, again, so many good teams are at the Players Era tournament. Texas with Sean Miller is there. I think Texas was a team that I had ranked in my final poll as well. USC and Eric Musselman are there, but that tournament is there for the taking for NC State. I will be curious to see if they can win it and make that statement early. But NC State, to me, is underrated at number 26. I think they should be in the top 25. Just a couple other notes from the AP top 25. Couple things stand out. One, first of all, it is still as the number one Patino to St. John's supporter. It is still crazy to me what he has done with this program at this point. Number 5 in the country, highest ever preseason poll. And I think it's totally justified. I think they're going to be awesome. He is obviously a legend in his own right, but I'm just amazed. Imagine 4 years ago saying St. John's is going to be a preseason top 5 team. That's where we are. UConn at number 4. They looked very good. They looked okay in their exhibition win to open the season on Monday night against Boston College. It was tied in the middle of the second half. They went on a big run. Defense looks much better. They played without Silas Demery, their starting point guard, Terrace Reed, their starting center, and they still won by like 20-plus points. Dan Hurley would never say it, but I think he was happy. Alex Caravan looks like he's playing, like he's back to the player he was 2 years ago. Struggled last year. Looked really good, 17 points. They get the win on Monday night. I'm just trying to look at some other things that are interesting. Texas Tech at number 11, their team I think is maybe a little bit overrated. I get you have JT Toppin, reigning Big 12 Player of the Year. The counter to that is I'm still not sold Christian Anderson as a point guard. So you have, listen, they had a 5th-year point guard in Elijah Hawkins last year who was really good. They lose him. Christian Anderson, I'm not sold he's a point guard, and if he is, it kind of takes away what he does best, which is shoot and score. So we'll see on Texas Tech. I had them more in like the 13-14 category. UCLA with Donovan Dent is going to be really good. I think Auburn is one of the more interesting teams. Stephen Pearl, we'll see what happens with him taking over for his dad. And the only other one that stands out, I think, the North Carolina Tar Heels. Make or break year for Hubert Davis. I actually do like the roster that they put together, but you spent $14 million on that roster. It was publicly reported by the number one outlet covering North Carolina that they spent $14 million on that roster. You not only have to win, I think you have to be good all year in the ACC conversation as far as a conference champion. And I think you I don't want to say you have to make the second weekend. Like if you're 28-5 and you're a 2 seed and you lose on some fluky thing, like whatever. But I think, and I've said this consistently with Carolina, it's not just you have to, make a second weekend. I think you have to be good all year. You can't have one of these years where you're, 21-10 on Selection Sunday. You're an 11 seed, and then you get hot in the tournament. I think you got to be good. You got to be dominant all year. The other thing with Carolina, they have traditionally scheduled as aggressively as anybody. Pretty soft schedule, all things considered. They do host Kansas early in the season. They play Michigan State on Thanksgiving Day. And they do play at Kentucky in the CBS Sports Classic or in the ACC SEC Challenge. But other than that, a pretty manageable schedule overall. So those are my thoughts on the AP Top 25. Quick reminder, I do have Florida a little bit overrated at number 3, Kentucky underrated at number 9, Louisville underrated at number 11, Arizona best described as misunderstood and underdiscussed at 13, Arkansas very underrated at 14, NC State not ranked and should be at number 26. Matt, do we have any questions on the AP poll before we get to a little Tyran Stokes? You know what? It looks like, tell you what, Luke has a question on Hubert Davis. I just answered. I think you have to be good all year. I don't think it's enough and Luke's question is, what's good enough for Hubert Davis to keep his job? I think you have to be like in the conversation. I don't think you have to win the ACC, but I do think you have to, you got to be a top 15 team all year. You got to be like a top 3 seed when we get to the ACC tournament, and you got to have success in March. You lose as a 3 seed to a 14 seed, I think you're done. You get into the tournament as an 11 seed, I think you're done. Listen, I know that we're in this NIL world and it's a big topic in all of these sports. Like, how much better of a job is Indiana football than Penn State football? Okay, I get it. But North Carolina is one of those jobs that should never be where they are right now. And I think more importantly, I think Hubert Davis up until this year could argue, well, listen, we never really went all in on NIL. We're a little bit behind. We were relying too much on that Carolina name brand. He got $14 million to put this roster together. So we'll see what happens. Let's see here. Only 3 teams in the ACC in the top 25. Listen, I'll defend the ACC a little bit. And I've said this about the ACC. I think the ACC, in my opinion, the thing that defined them for so long was actually the thing that was holding them back a little bit. And what I mean by that is we had all these legendary coaches. Tony Bennett, obviously Coach K, Roy Williams, Jim Larinaga for Miami is a legend. None of them wanted to do NIL. And we could criticize Coach K. At least Coach K was like, I don't really want to do this. Hand it over to John Shire. Let him figure it out. Roy Williams, the same. But Tony Bennett for years was this 1 foot in, 1 foot out. I want to do it my way, but I'm not willing to modernize my program. I can tell you for a fact, I think Virginia quietly has one of the more expensive rosters than people realize because their new coach, Ryan Odom, was like, we got to spend to get good players. You want to win? Okay, we got to spend money. And so I think Virginia is going to be better. I think Miami with Jay Lucas, the former Duke assistant, is going to be better. By the way, I want to shout out Miami's social media team. A lot of schools are finally starting to realize, hey, this YouTube platform that Aaron Torres is dominating. No, I'm just kidding. But there's a lot more people on YouTube than there's ever been. And a lot of schools are doing behind-the-scenes content. Kentucky has done a series. UConn just started a series. BYU has been pumping out content all fall long. Miami has the best behind-the-scenes show that I've seen. It's only like 2 or 3 episodes. But they go through the hire. They go through the recruiting stuff. When kids are on campus, this, that, whatever. Really good stuff from the Miami social media team. But there are only 3 ACC teams, Louisville, Duke, and North Carolina. NC State is number 26. I would have Virginia in a top. Let me put it this way. If I was doing a top 30, I would have Virginia and Miami in there as well. Plus, I think NC State is a top 25 team. So all of a sudden, that's 6. You got 4 in the tournament last year, even though Carolina probably shouldn't have been. So I actually don't think it's the most egregious thing in the world that they only have 3. But I do think that league will be very much improved. Really quickly, Luke had a comment on the hot seat. Any takes on the overall hot seat? Have to think it includes Mike Young, who's Virginia Tech, Matt McMahon, LSU, Bobby Hurley, and Hubert Davis. So Hubert Davis, definitive hot seat. We've talked about him. Bobby Hurley, very interesting, has 1 year left on his contract. And there has been a notion for years in college sports, you have to have a coach on a 4-year contract. Otherwise, they can't recruit. Well, every year, Bobby Hurley, they keep giving him another chance to try and figure it out. And this past year, he is down to the final year of his contract. So his contract expires whenever it is, April 1st, March 15th, whatever it ends up being the day their season ends. And so they didn't extend it last year. And I think that was their way of trying to be like, you should look for another job. Problem is, who the hell wants to, excuse my language, who the heck wants to hire Bobby Hurley as their basketball coach? I don't know. I don't really see a scenario where he's back next year because, one, the team is terrible. Jaden Quaintance obviously left. Most of their best players are gone. And then, two, you'd have to give him like a 4-year extension. So I think he is done after this year. Mike Young at Virginia Tech, he's got to win. They brought in this European kid. I don't even know how to say his name, from Greece, who people think is going to be like all ACC second team type kid. So we'll see what happens at Virginia Tech. Matt McMahon, no doubt. I think LSU fans wanted him fired last year. That did not happen. And I just bring it up because, I think that there was a thought that he'd be out last year, was given a crap ton of NIL money. Now, I'm sure part of that NIL slush fund was just basically rev share money that he would have gotten anyway. But it's kind of put up or shut up time for Matt McMahon. The Didon Thomas kid, I think, is really good. Markel Sutton from Omaha is actually really good as well. And, he's got to win this year. And if he doesn't, the other thing with Matt McMahon, like people say, well, it's LSU. Remember, Will Wade was at LSU as recently as 2022, and they made the tournament in Will Wade's final year. That's not that long ago. And so LSU fans are like, we don't have to be this bad. It's almost like, probably the right analogy is it's almost like Kentucky football, right? Kentucky football right now, I know it's different, but it's kind of the same. People were like, oh, Kentucky football, blah, blah, blah. It's a bottom feeder program. And it's like, well, if Vandy can be good in football, there's no reason that Kentucky can't be acceptable in football. Not an embarrassment is maybe the best way to put it. Kind of the same with LSU basketball. It's like, well, if Ole Miss can be good and make a Sweet 16 like they did last year, if Alabama can be a perennial top 10 team, there's no reason that LSU can't be the same. So I think Matt McMahon is very much on the hot seat. But I do think, what's interesting is, besides Hubert Davis, most of the big names were kind of canned last year, right? Indiana with Mike Woodson. Who's the other one? I'm blanking. Oh, Villanova, Kyle Neptune. There was thought, would he survive another year? He's Jay Wright's guy. He did not. Jobs kind of opened up last year. I don't think it'll be a crazy carousel. It's almost like last year was like what football is this year. It was a really quiet carousel in football last year. Remember, it was only UCF and maybe one other power conference job that opened. Arkansas, Penn State, Virginia Tech, UCLA, Oregon State just opened up the other day. So it's getting kind of crazy. All right, let's go ahead and wrap. One more topic. Because you know what is crazy? What's crazy right now is the recruitment of Tyran Stokes. So Tyran Stokes is the #1 high school player in basketball in America. And I want to preface this because I think this is important. We're going to timestamp this segment. It is currently 12:29 Eastern time on, what's today? Tuesday, I guess afternoon on the East Coast, okay? And so I bring it up because it is always subject to change, and there is a possibility that by the time you watch this, he could be committed. But there was thought that Tyran Stokes was going to be committed to Kentucky by now, and the fact that he isn't has certainly put the Kentucky fan base into a little bit of a frenzy. So let's go ahead and talk a little bit about it. I think there's a lot of misinformation out about Tyran Stokes specifically. All right, Tyran Stokes, we're not going to do the whole player profile. You know who he is. You know how good he is. You know his talent. #1 player in America. Why I'm going to bring up this part, he's originally from Louisville, so the state of Kentucky. He now plays in the state of California. His high school ball, you can see the high school jersey there. Notre Dame High School, Sherman Oaks, California. As I've said a few times, about 1.5 miles that way right there from where I'm sitting right now. Very rainy day in California today, by the way. As far as Tyran Stokes is concerned, so his recruitment has certainly been interesting. And you know who he is as a player, 6'7". I think he's by far the best player in this class. Whatever. Well, I bring it up because his recruitment has certainly been interesting, and it's certainly taken a few twists, but maybe not a ton. Started out early on, you're trying to figure out, first of all, is he even going to reclassify? Because there was talk early that he might reclassify, play college basketball this year. But he's from Louisville, visit to Louisville, goes to Kansas over the summer, goes to Kentucky over the summer. At certain points, I think there was a thought that people publicly seemed to think that Louisville was the favorite. I don't know if there was actually anything credible there other than that he's from Louisville and that was his first visit, but that was the perception. But I bring it up because really since about Peach Jam, about late July, it has felt like all the momentum is going to Tyran Stokes to be a Kentucky Wildcat. Now, there's been a little blips here and there. We talked a few weeks ago when Talon Kinney, another Kentucky native 5-star, committed to Kansas, that Talon Kinney said, I'm trying to recruit Tyron to Kansas, et cetera, et cetera. But I just bring it up because with Tyran Stokes, it does feel like it's mostly been Kentucky, a little bit of Kansas buzz here and there. But what made it interesting was that 2 Fridays ago, so not 4 or 5 days ago, but this would have been like October 3rd, October 2nd, something like that. Tyran Stokes puts out his final 5. It is Kentucky, Kansas, USC, Oregon, and Louisville in his final 5. And immediately there becomes speculation that he is on commit watch and that he is going to be committing very soon. Why is that noteworthy? It's noteworthy because there started to be rumors last week that he was going to commit this previous Friday. So 4 or 5 days ago now, that would have been October 10th, 11th, something like that. There were stories that he was going to commit on October 11th. And then all of a sudden, all this stuff starts happening. Now, I want to be clear because on this show, I actually said that I believed that he would not commit until at least his birthday, which was this past Sunday. There was a piece of information that I have that made me believe he wasn't committing before his birthday. I can't really share it. But the point is, it felt like, could he commit as early as Friday? Sunday seemed like the drop-dead deadline for most people, although there was nothing credible. And then on top of it, Kentucky had its preseason basketball event, Big Blue Madness, on Saturday, and Mark Pope teased a big surprise. Why is that noteworthy? Number 1 player in America. Maybe he's going to... and by the way, Mark Pope didn't say anything. Mark Pope can't comment on unsigned recruits. But there was this speculation of, there's a big surprise. Is Tyran Stokes going to be there? Is he going to run out of the tunnel? Is he going to commit on Friday and show up on Saturday? Is he going to commit at Big Blue Madness? And so we get through the weekend. And again, maybe by the time you watch this, he is already committed. But he does not commit Friday. He does not commit on his birthday Sunday. And by Monday, Big Blue Nation was in full panic mode. I woke up even to DMs on Monday, basically saying, Torres, why hasn't he committed? What does it mean? I had one person say to me, the longer it goes, the worse it is for us. What does it all mean? Well, I'm here to tell you, and maybe I'm wrong, and maybe it's subject to change, but as of 12:33 Eastern time on Tuesday, I am not worried, Kentucky fans. I believe he will be a Kentucky Wildcat. And I think there's a couple things at play here that we need to discuss. First of all, everybody is working under the assumption that he was going to commit on Friday. But here's the thing. There was never actually anything credible that said that he was going to commit. There was reports, there was speculation, but he never said anything. His family never said anything. His agent never said anything. He never dropped a commitment date or video or Instagram post or tweet. There was no he's announcing with 24/7 Sports. He's announcing with On3. He's announcing on SportsCenter. And so the Friday date was just kind of this thing that got put out there. And then it becomes a thing of telephone. And it's like, it's almost like, the game of telephone when you're a kid and, somebody says something and then somebody else hears it, but they hear it a little bit different, but then they share it. That was what this was from the beginning. Tyran Stokes never said he was committing on Friday or his birthday or whatever, or this or that. No outlet reported like, it's definitively happening there. It just became speculation that he was going to commit on Friday. And so when he doesn't, I understand where you would freak out if you're a Kentucky fan, but my counter to that would be this. Again, I had Kentucky fans saying the longer it goes, the worse it is for us. And I said, the longer it goes, what? Well, you can only say it's going long if you were under the assumption that he was definitively committing on Friday, Saturday, or Sunday. So I don't know that was ever Tyran Stokes' timeline. And the one thing you can say about this recruitment Tyran Stokes and the people very close to him have been very tight-lipped. There really has been nothing super duper, super major in terms of updates from him. I know his mom, remember his mom gave the interview with Jacob Polachek at Peach Jam where she said, we're not a Louisville, we're from Louisville, we're not a Kentucky family, but she doesn't do a lot of interviews. Tyron certainly doesn't do a lot of interviews. And, he has agents and reps behind the scenes, but they're pretty close-lipped as well. And so even with the top 5, Tyran Stokes didn't even announce a top 5. He just put out him in 5 different jerseys on Twitter. And that's how we figured out it was his top 5. And so to say that somehow if this goes longer, it's bad for Kentucky, it's only going longer under the assumption that he was going to commit on Friday. And we have no tangible proof that he was ever going to commit on Friday. And so I think that's being overblown and misrepresented. And then to take it a step further, I think on Monday there was a report of is Kansas once again making a late push? And I think Bill Self is trying to get the best player in high school basketball to commit to him. I think that's fair to say. But there's also this thing called leverage. And I think, again, Tyran Stokes, he's going to commit when he wants to commit. There are probably 20 players in this class, 10 players in this class, that they can go to whatever school they want and commit on whatever time frame that they want. The 78th ranked player in the class, if he has an offer from his favorite school, he's got to commit now or they're going to move on. Tyran Stokes doesn't have to move on because there's no one for Kansas or Kentucky or whoever to replace him with. And so he knows he has the leverage. He knows he can commit when he wants. And oh, by the way, if he wants his agent, I don't know who represents him, to get a couple more bucks out, to use another offer as leverage, he can go ahead and do that. By the way, before you complain and, oh my God, NIL, it's so terrible. Coaches do that all the time. By the way, I saw some report about Mark Stoops as a candidate at Virginia Tech. No, he's not. Either he's using leverage to try to create interest in the job, or Kentucky's trying to create interest and be like, oh, look, he's a candidate. You should hire him. The point I'm trying to make, people use leverage all the time in this world, and maybe this is just a leverage play from him or his representation. But I still look at this, and I'll be honest, I would still be shocked if it wasn't Kentucky. Why? Couple reasons. One, he is a Nike kid. Nike is not investing millions of dollars in him and super excited for him to go to an Adidas school and wear Adidas shoes. I know it's been done. I know Cooper Flagg was a New Balance player last year who went to Duke and wore Nikes, okay? That's different. If you're New Balance, you got to say, Cooper Flagg, you do what you got to do, bro. What is New Balance going to say? You can't go to Duke? Okay, well, we're not going to sign with you. With Nike, there's a little bit different because 3 of his final schools are Nike schools. I don't believe that he's going to go to an Adidas school. Beyond that, I still think Kentucky offers the best everything. He's from the state of Kentucky. Biggest brand. Mark Pope is just getting started. With Bill Self, listen, Bill Self's a Hall of Famer. Maybe the best pure basketball coach in college basketball right now. But he's in his mid-60s. 2 separate heart issues. There is a chance. Now, he's not recruiting like he's not going to be back next year, but there's a chance that Bill Self is not back next year. And so from there, what do? So you have the Nike thing. You have the Mark Pope thing. He's from Kentucky. Here's the other thing. We don't know what everyone's rev share NIL setup is. What we do know, though, is that Kentucky, as far as rev share and NIL is set up, they're set up better than any program in college basketball. It's been reported. We've talked about it. The Matt Norlander report that they're going to use 45% of their rev share on basketball. Now, that was shot down by a couple reports. Of course, if you're Mitch Barnhart, you don't want that out there because you're probably going to be hiring a football coach in the next few months. But at the same time, I do look at this situation and I do say they have the most money to spend, and it's his home state school, and they're good. It'd be one thing if it was one of the 3, but not all 3. If he was from Dallas and Kentucky had the most money to spend, maybe it wouldn't matter. If he was from Kentucky, but Kentucky didn't have the money that some other school has, then it might matter. If Kentucky's rev share was behind, it might not matter. But from Kentucky, biggest rev share pot, Nike school, I'm sorry. I'll worry about this one not being Kentucky whenever. But again, to assume that Kentucky is somehow fallen behind is only to assume that Tyran Stokes was definitively committing this weekend. Last thought, by the way. I will say this. I do think, and Mark Pope, any of your staff, if you're listening, reach out to me. let me give you a free piece of advice. I do think the one thing that Mark Pope can do better, and he's been great. Sweet 16, great roster in first year, second year, whatever. I still think he's going to get the number one recruit in America. I think he's got to be a little bit better on the PR side. If he has the pulse of what Big Blue Nation is talking about. So if he knows that Big Blue Nation is on commit watch and Tyran Stokes is not coming to Big Blue Madness, he probably should, through one of the local media outlets, be like, we feel good about Tyron, and he can't say it publicly, but this is called an anonymous source. It's called leaking a story. Go to one of the reporters in Lexington and be like, listen, there's a lot of smoke about Tyron. We haven't heard he's committing. He's not going to be. We have no flights booked for him for Big Blue Madness. He's not going to be here. Then you don't have this whole situation. By the way, I'm not saying Mark Pope is a terrible coach or a terrible human or whatever. I'm just saying it's the things that you learn. Is that it should never get to the point where the fan base is expecting him to commit on Friday if you're not expecting him to commit on Friday. And by the way, you could still be the favorite, but you could say to a reporter, look, we feel great about where we are with Tyron, but we haven't heard anything yet. He hasn't told us that he's committed. There are ways to do it. John Calipari used to be smart about this at Kentucky. He used to call it a hat on the table recruitment. He said, I don't want to be a hat on the table. And so if a kid was just using Kentucky in the Final 5, Final 3, Final 2, whatever, the media would know if the kid wasn't going to Kentucky. Like John Calipari would, somebody on the staff would kind of let the media know, we ain't getting this kid. So you could put that out there so the fans aren't mad and claim that we lose him. By the way, there was a good example a few weeks ago. Abdu Torre, number one player from the state of Connecticut. His Final 3 is UConn, Providence, and Arkansas. I think you could sit there and say, well, it's going to be UConn. And if it's not UConn, it's a huge recruiting miss. Dan Hurley or his staff or whomever is working the media behind the scenes, let the local media know very early, we're not really recruiting this kid. And so at that point, when he committed, UConn fans knew he wasn't going to be a factor. So I could go on and on. I think Mark Pope, that's the one thing I would advise. Have a good relationship. And he has a great relationship with the media. I'm not saying be better with the media. And I'm not saying it because of me, because the scoop ain't coming to me. So I don't really care. But what I am just saying is, if he wasn't going to commit at Big Blue Madness, you should probably let your media know that behind the scenes. Again, you can't say it publicly, because otherwise you put yourself in a situation like this. It is now 12:43 Eastern time. Tyran Stokes, as best I can tell, still has not committed. But again, maybe by the time you listen to this, he will have. All right, I'll tell you what. We're going to go ahead and get out of here. If you are not subscribed to the Aaron Torres pod, how are you not subscribed? I mean, look at this show. We just did an hour and a half off the top of my head on all things college sports. If you're not subscribed, make sure to do so. Apple, Spotify, Amazon Music, Google Music, and of course here on YouTube as well, where, let's be real, we just kick you-know-what and take names. We're going to go ahead and get out of here. I'm fired up, though. I want to thank our partners, SeatGeek and the SeatGeek app. Use promo code Torres, gets you $20 off your first purchase. $20 off your first purchase. We appreciate your support. SeatGeek.com, promo code Torres, gets you $20 off your first purchase. What else? Caulipuffs.com. You saw them earlier. Caulipuffs.com. If you use promo code Torres at Caulipuffs.com, you get 15% off your total purchase. So that's awesome. And then also thank you to our friends Circa Casino, Circa Sportsbook, new sportsbook, Mint Kentucky Downs, Franklin, Kentucky. We appreciate everybody's support. We will be back Thursday morning, and darn it, do you know we'll have plenty to talk about. Shout out to Torrent Craig. Shout out to Rachel who hates my voice. Shout out to JJ Reddick, you F-head. I'll be back.